Okay, so we're on Daf Lamed Amud Aleph, page 38. We're learning about the argument between Shmuel and the other opinion, Reb Shimon ben Yochai, about mitzvah ba'avera. When you do a mitzvah, and it came about by doing an avera. And there, of course, there are, as I mentioned, a lot of discussion about this and what scenarios does this apply? When do we say this law of mitzvah ba'avera? So it is a big topic, but on a simple level, we're dealing with a lulav that's stolen, and the question is, the first day of Sukkot, everyone agrees you can't use this lulav. It's a stolen lulav. It's not yours. But the other days of Sukkot, there's a discussion about using such a lulav. On the one hand, it doesn't have to be yours on the later days of Sukkot. On the other hand, it's stolen goods. It's an avera. It was done through an avera. You got it through an avera. So Rav Shimon ben Yochai says you can't use it. It's not valid the whole Sukkot. Shmuel holds it is valid the other days of Sukkot. It doesn't have to be yours. It's okay. It's not yours. It's stolen. It's fine. The first day of Sukkot, everyone agrees. The other days of Sukkot, there is an argument. Now, the Mishnah had said lulav hagazol, a stolen lulav, is invalid. According to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, what is the Mishnah talking about when it says a lulav that's stolen is invalid? According to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, that's talking about the entire Sukkot. The entire Sukkot, a lulav hagazol, a stolen lulav, is invalid. According to Shmuel, what is it talking about? It's talking about the first day of Sukkot. The later days of Sukkot, because the lulav that's stolen is valid on the other days of Sukkot, because Shmuel does not hold of this law of mitzvah haba ba'avera. He doesn't hold of that, which we explained yesterday, that he holds it doesn't apply to rabbinic laws and only biblical laws. It's a problem of mitzvah that comes with an avera. So Shmuel would hold the other days of Sukkot you would be allowed to. So how does he learn the Mishnah? The Mishnah is talking about only on the first day. Now, when you learn the Mishnah, you get stuck. You just read the first two words of the Mishnah, you're already stuck. It says a lulav that's stolen. Okay, the first four words. Lulav that's stolen or that's dried out is invalid. And the first thing that comes to your mind is a stolen lulav is rare. A borrowed lulav is common. Why does the Mishnah not say a borrowed lulav is invalid? Because we know on the first day of Sukkot, you cannot borrow a lulav from someone else. If they give it to you as a gift, okay, but you can't borrow a lulav from someone else. So the first question that comes to one's mind when they learn the Mishnah is, why does it not tell me about a borrowed lulav? It tells me about a stolen lulav, but it doesn't say anything about a borrowed lulav. So why does it not tell me about a borrowed? So let's try to answer this question. According to Reb Shimon ben Yochai, is a borrowed lulav allowed on the rest of Sukkot? The first day, it's definitely not allowed because it has to be yours. Borrowed, it's not yours. But what about the rest of Sukkot? Is a borrowed lulav allowed on the rest of Sukkot? The answer is yes. Is a stolen lulav allowed on the rest of Sukkot? The answer is no. So according to Reb Shimon ben Yochai, if you want to answer why the Mishnah doesn't say about a borrowed lulav, the answer is because a borrowed lulav is valid on parts of Sukkot. It's not valid on the first day, but it's valid the other days. The Mishnah is talking about a case that's the entire Sukkah. And therefore, the Mishnah says, Lulav HaGozel is really telling me that it's invalid even the entire Sukkah. So it can't say a case of borrowed. Because borrowed lulav, that's okay. That's kosher. Not the first day, but the other days, it's kosher. So if the Mishnah is telling me things that are not kosher for the entire Sukkah, it's telling me a guzzle, a stolen one. That fits with Reb Shimon ben Yochai's understanding. Because the Mishnah talks about cases that are invalid the entire Sukkah, the guzzle and the yavish. These two are both invalid the entire Sukkah. It flows. It flows well. They're both the similar category. They're both invalid for the entire Sukkah. According to the opinion of Shmuel, what would Shmuel hold? Shmuel holds that a borrowed lulav is kosher the rest of Sukkot. A stolen lulav is kosher for the rest of Sukkot. So when you learn Shmuel's way of learning the Mishnah, if we follow Shmuel's opinion, the Mishnah, you're now stuck at the Mishnah with the fact that the Mishnah says a stolen lulav. Shouldn't it definitely say a borrowed lulav? And that was the Gemara that we learned yesterday. That logically, it would make sense to tell us a borrowed lulav for a few reasons. The Mishnah, the Gemara's understanding is it should have said borrowed, because if borrowed is invalid, then that would like teach us for sure a stolen one would be invalid. So it would be more of a important ruling to tell me about borrowed. And this is so the understanding would be that that why does it say guzzle? In other words, stolen implies like borrowed is not that. When you say stolen, it implies, oh, stolen is invalid. Borrowed won't be invalid. So the Gemara asks, how could Shmuel learn this Mishnah? According to Shmuel, stolen and borrowed are always the same law. The first day, neither of them are kosher. The other days, both of them are kosher. The other days of Sukkot. So why would the Gemara say a case? Why would the Mishnah pick a case of stolen, which implies that borrowed is kosher? It's not true. Which basically means let the Mishnah say a case of borrowed. Why did the Mishnah say a case of borrowed? That would be a much more practical case, more common case, and it would be more of a chidush. In other words, how often does someone steal a lulav? How often does someone borrow? Borrows all the time. People are traveling. People don't have a lulav. They borrow it. They come to shul. They forgot their lulav. They didn't buy a lulav. Whatever it is, they need to have kaddish on that day of Sukkot. They want to come to shul. They come to shul. They forgot they didn't buy a lulav. So whatever it is, they borrow the lulav. The borrow is a common case. It's also much more of a chiddush. Stolen, of course. Okay, stolen. Stolen's invalid. It's not so surprising. Borrowed. That's surprising. Yes, David.
Does Shmuel give a reason of why he doesn't hold by that a mitzvah that comes by means of an avera is not an obstacle?
No, he doesn't. Teves on the bottom wants to explain that he can't argue on the whole law. So Teves on the bottom, Teves, it's a one-line Teves on the bottom of page 38. He says, because it's rabbinic on the other days of Sukkot, he doesn't, he says the rabbis weren't so strict. When they said you got to shake lulav, they didn't care if it ends up being stolen, if it's a mitzvah baba avera, if it came through a sin or not. They just said shake lulav. In other words, the ruling of the rabbis was shaking the lulav. They didn't include the details. If you did it with an object that was taken or gotten through sin, they didn't exclude such objects. So for rabbinic laws, because it's rabbinic, the rabbis didn't add on that other law. Some explain Teves a little more. They say that Teves holds that maybe mitzvah baba avera, the problem with it is rabbinic. So because the rabbis don't like to add on two laws, they normally just add one. They don't do a gzeira legazera. They don't do like decrees on decrees. So some say maybe Tosis holds that mitzvah b'avera. The problem with it is rabbinic also. So the rabbis didn't make two rabbinic laws here. They only said one. But again, Tosis, it doesn't clarify what his reason is. Just says rabbinic is different. The rabbis didn't prohibit mitzvah b'avera on their law. Why that is, we don't. You could understand that the rabbis didn't want to make too many rules. Maybe they don't want to overburden the people and make too many rules. They just wanted us to remember the Beis Hamikdash. So you still remember the Beis Hamikdash, even if it's an object that was gotten through inappropriate manner. It's still remembering the Beis Hamikdash, so it didn't really make a difference if it was a stolen object or not. Could be something along those lines. But the point the Tosha says is rabbinic. Rabbinic, that's why he doesn't hold a mitzvah b'avera. In other words, what Tosha is really saying is he really does hold a mitzvah b'avera when it's biblical. It's not like he argues on the whole concept. Just when it's a case of a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, which is this scenario, he disagrees. Shmuel disagrees. Anyway, bottom line is, getting back to our Mishnah. So when it says stolen, it seems to imply that borrowed would be okay. And what is the Gemara's conclusion? The Gemara's conclusion is that we must be talking about the first day, because on the other days of Sukkot, stolen is kosher, and the Mishnah says stolen is not kosher. So it must be talking about on the first day of Sukkot. At least then the law is correct, according to Shmuel, that a stolen lulav is invalid. It's on the first day, according to Shmuel. That's the way he's going to have to learn the Mishnah. But why that implies that a borrowed would be kosher on the first day? The Gemara says no, doesn't imply that. Because a stolen is really better than borrowed. Stolen lulav is actually more yours than a borrowed one. A borrowed one is not yours at all. When you steal an object, in certain scenarios, it actually becomes yours. It becomes yours to the extent that you'd still have to return the value of it, but you don't always have to return the actual object, because that object became yours. That's yours now. I want the money. There are certain scenarios where that's the case, that you don't get that object back. You get the money back. He can keep the object. He stole it, and he did somehow, for whatever reason, it becomes his. He owes you money, but the object becomes his. In the case, the Gemara understands, the understanding in the Gemara is that stam gazela yiyosh bailam uchadi dami. What the 2 lines up, 3 lines up from the bottom of the page, it uses this term, the Gemara, that a typical robbery causes the owner to give up hope, and because the owner gives up hope, you become the actual owner of the object. You will still have an obligation to pay him back the value, but the object becomes yours because the owner, in a certain sense, relinquishes his ownership of that object when he gives up hope. I should mention there's a vart from the Chidushei Harim, one of the Gerer Rebbes, that said that what's the reason Yiyosh is koina? It's a punishment. You gave up hope. Where's your amunah? Where's your trust in Hashem? You gave up hope. Therefore, the person who stole it, he gains ownership of it. So anyway, it's a little vart on giving up hope, how important it is to never give up hope. But the Gemara that we're learning shows us, this is brought, of course, in more this is brought often in the monetary laws of halacha, choshen mishpat, and Baba Kama tractate, Baba Matzia. You have these concepts of Baba Basra. You have this concept of Yiyush, that when a person gives up hope, he relinquishes his ownership to some extent, and that causes that the person who stole it actually is the owner of that object. He can be considered he owns it now. He still owes the guy money to pay him back, but he owns the object. And because of that, there's room to say that you're more of an owner when you stole it than when you borrow it. And therefore, the Mishnah gives a case of stolen. If a stolen lulav is, even a stolen lulav is invalid on the first day. But the question now is, so why is it invalid? Why would a stolen lulav be invalid if it actually is yours? And he doesn't hold of mitzvah haba b'aveira, seemingly in these, Shmuel doesn't want, they don't want to understand, the understanding of the Gemara is that he's not mixing in this rule of mitzvah haba b'aveira, which, seems a little surprising, because on the first day of Sukkot, it's actually biblical to shake the lulav. And because it's biblical on the first day of Sukkot, you would think that would be a case that Teves would hold that Shmuel should agree that there's a problem of mitzvah haba b'aveira. So in a certain sense, we sort of contradicted ourselves here. And we've concluded that the way Shmuel is learning the Mishnah is that a stolen lulav is invalid, but don't understand that to mean, but a borrowed would be kosher. No, a borrowed is also invalid. But we specifically want to tell you that a stolen one is invalid because you might think a stolen one is valid because you own it. When you steal something and the owner gives up hope, you actually own that item. And you would think that on the first day of Sukkot, you could fulfill the mitzvah. And the Gemara's conclusion is kamash malon. It comes and lets us hear that it's not so. That it's not so. What does that mean that it's not so? What is the Gemara's answer that it's not so? So Rashi tells us, it comes and lets us hear that we don't assume that the guy gave up hope. Let me mute it. There's some sound in the background. We can't assume that the guy gave up hope. We can't assume such a thing. Why can't we assume that the guy gave up hope? Because it's very possible that even though you stole it from him in front of him, and at that point, he didn't fight back, that doesn't mean that the next day he's not going to go to court and say, oh, I have no problem, steal it. It's almost like nowadays, someone steals your car and you have these machines up. You're not going to run after the guy who stole it. You got to be crazy. You call the police afterwards. What are you going to go chase after him? And you're going to get into a fight? But besides, you have they have these detectors that can find where your car, if you really want your car back or you just want the money from insurance, you have to decide what you want. But the thing is, what are you going to fight with the guy? No, tomorrow I'll fight. I'll get the police report. I'll get my money from insurance. I'll get another car, or I'll let the police. I'm not going to fight the guy. So here's the same thing. Years Milo. Who's that? Who says the guy was really Miyayish? She gave up hope. Why? Who said? Maybe he's gonna deal with it later. He'll come tomorrow. He'll go to court. He'll get them to get it back. So the way Rashi learns is we can't assume that the owner gave up hope until you know for a fact that he gave up hope. A stolen lulav is invalid on the first day because it's very possible that the owner did not give up hope. What comes out from Rashi is if you know for a fact that the owner gave up hope, you could actually use, according to Shmuel, it seems that you would be able to use this lulav on the first day of Sukkot. Yesterday, I ended off with this question and answer from the commentaries that it doesn't seem to flow with Teves. The way we explained Shmuel, it doesn't seem to flow. And that is, Shmuel says that only that he doesn't hold of mitzvah b'aveira on the other days of Sukkot, but on the first day of Sukkot, it's biblical. And Shmuel holds on a biblical law. He holds of mitzvah b'aveira that there's a problem if you attain ownership of this lulav through a sin, through an aveira, you can't use it. It would seem that law would apply even according to Shmuel on the first day. So how is he going to allow us to use this lulav on the first day of Sukkot if we know for a fact that the owner gave up hope and it's yours. It is the Goslins. It's the person who stole it. It's his because the owner gave up hope, and it becomes the Goslins. It becomes the person who stole it. And according to him, and if so, it's according to the way Rashi explains it, he's going to be allowed to use it. What do you mean? It's biblical. This is a biblical law, and it was attained. The object was attained through sin, through stealing. How can you use a lulav that was attained through stealing on the first day of Sukkot when it's biblical? On the other days of Sukkot, no problem. It's rabbinic. We don't have a problem of mitzvah b'avera. But on the first day, it's biblical. So how can you use this lulav, even if you know for a fact? Again, the case of the Mishnah is you don't know for a fact that it was the guy gave up hope. We don't know for a fact. And therefore, the Mishnah says you can't assume he gave up hope. And therefore, it's invalid to use on the first day of Sukkot a stolen lulav, because it could be that the owner didn't give up hope. And Shmuel would say that that's not acceptable. You can't use it. It might not be yours. What about if you do know that he definitely gave up hope? Rashi implies that would be kosher. If that would be kosher, it sounds surprising. How could that be okay if mitzvah haba b'avera, if Shmuel really holds of it on a biblical law that there's a problem of mitzvah haba b'avera, this would be a case of mitzvah haba b'avera, mitzvah that came through an avera, according to Shmuel, and even according to Shmuel, because it's on the first day, it's a biblical law. This would the law of mitzvah haba b'avera should apply. So this is the question we asked yesterday, and I gave an answer according to one of the commentaries says that could be that there's a difference between if it was stolen from a Jew or stolen from a non-Jew, and therefore, because it's a because we're dealing with a case of a stolen item, and there might be a problem of mitzvah haba b'avera. And it's stolen. If it was stolen from a non-Jew, then it's not an issue of mitzvah b'avera, even on the first, even on a biblical mitzvah, and that would be the reason. That would be how you could reconcile it. But I did want to say that there is another way that possibly you could learn, and that is Rashi doesn't agree with Teves, and Teves doesn't agree with Rashi, and that is that the way Teves maybe learns the Gemara, and again, it's not clear. Because Teves doesn't spell out how he explains the Gemara, but the way the Gemara ends off, kamash malon, it comes and lets us hear that it's not so. It could be that Teves is saying that kamash malon, it comes and lets us hear that there's a problem of mitzvah b'avera because it's biblical. So in other words, the Mishnah tells us lulav hagozol. You would think that if it's a stolen lulav, you should be able to use it on the first day of Sukkot because it's really yours. The Mishnah says pasul, it's invalid. You know why? According to the way Shmuel learns it, it's a mitzvah b'avera. It's biblical. This is a biblical obligation. Biblical obligation. You have a problem mitzvah b'avera. So you can learn it that Rashi doesn't learn it that way. Rashi maybe doesn't agree with the bottom Teves. That there's a difference with that. Maybe Shmuel disagrees with the whole concept, mitzvah b'avera. Maybe Shmuel doesn't agree with that. And it's only Teves holds of it. Rashi doesn't hold of it. And therefore, according to Rashi doesn't have to learn that way. Rashi, even on the first day, there's no problem, mitzvah b'avera. But Teves holds of this rabbinic, he holds of this, that it's only on rabbinic laws, and on biblical laws, it's not a problem. And therefore, according to Teves, maybe you can learn that the end of the Gemara is kamash malon. It comes and lets us hear that the law of mitzvah b'avera kicks in when it's a biblical commandment, and that's what the Mishnah is coming to tell us. Okay, I hope I didn't confuse you, but that's just touching on the questions. The question that we tried to reconcile and make sure everything fit together. From yesterday, I believe that gives us another avenue, another pathway, how to reconcile Teves with the way the Gemara seems to conclude, and to explain that maybe it's a machlokes Rashi and Teves. Yes, David.
I'm not asking in terms of mitzvah, the mitzvah and the whole thing, the avera. Let's say Mr. A wants to buy a valuable object from Mr. B, and he offers him $500. Mr. B refuses. So Mr. A steals the object and says, well, now it's mine. I owe you $500. This is what you're saying, that they think that the object belongs to the Ganef because he just owes the money.
So I don't know if you're correct that he owes him 500. He might owe him because the guy seemed to disagree and say I'm not selling it or it's not worth 500. It might have felt that it's worth $750 or $1,000. I don't know if that's the amount he owes, but yeah, this could be a scenario of such a case, especially if the guy has a gun and he takes it and he takes it away and says, if you'd like to discuss it later, just keep in mind I have this gun, and says, okay, so see you later, and he goes off with it. So the question would be, yeah, do you think that would the guy give up hope from getting it back? Is it worth fighting with such a guy, or is it worth just losing $500? You have to make that decision.
Well, let's say it's established that the item is worth $500. That's the
Okay.
going price for this object. But
Okay,
this
fine.
guy
Let's say
said,
that's the
to
going.
me,
Yeah.
it's more valuable.
Right.
I want this. I'm not willing to sell it, even though it's
Okay.
$500. Or let's
Right.
say, you steal a guy's lottery ticket, or you steal a guy's
Right.
escrow, whatever it is. So how can the guy say, well, now this belongs to me. I just owe you the money for it.
Right. So the law would be that it could be considered his. The guy stole it, could be considered his. And the reason it would be considered his is because it would be if the original owner gives up hope from getting it back. Miyayish. Now we're going to learn soon that not everyone agrees that yiyush alone, giving up hope alone, is sufficient. Really, you need something else in addition to giving up hope. And there are many different there are a few different ways that you could add an additional factor to this. One would be if the item changed. Shinoi Hashem, like the name of the item, that the item has is considered something different. So if the item changes, that would be in addition to Yiyush, giving up hope, that would be how you become the owner. Another type of case would be if it changed hands. So it's not the original Ganav, but it's Yiyush and Shinoi Rishus. Yiyush means it gives up hope, and Shinoi Rishus would mean it changes the possession from the Ganav or the Goslin, from the person who stole it, to another person. So in addition to the fact that the original owner gave up hope, it also changed hands from one Goslin to the next person. And that would be called Shinoi Rishus. It changes possession. The ownership of it has changed, and you have Yush, so you have both of those things. So there's Shinoi Hashem, there's Shinoi Rishus. There could be Shinoi Maisa, which we'll see if the item is a different item. In other words, not just that the name of it changed, but that actually the item has been fixed and changed into a different item. You've built something out of it. So these would be additional factors that would make the Yiyush a complete, a proper Yiyush, and giving that the Yiyush that it would work to make it yours, to make it considered yours. So you follow me, David? That some say that Yiyush, part of our Gemara was relying on Yiyush alone is good, but soon the Gemara seems to follow the other views, or mentions these other views that hold that there needs to be more than just Yiyush giving up hope. There's other factors that have to, it has to be qualified. Yiyush alone is not enough. There needs to be another type of change in it.
I'm still not understanding this.
So the answer to your question is that yes, it becomes the person who stole it becomes his.
So how does Torah justify that?
It's not justifying it. Let me ask you a different question. If someone stole from you a baby stroller, and their baby dirtied it, disgusting, and wore it out, and then they say, you know what, I'm sorry, I should never have stolen this from you, you know what? I'm going to give it back to you. And now it's all tattered and full of holes and dirty and filthy and who knows what. And it has, do you think that's right that they're giving back this stroller? Or do you think they should give you the $500 that this nice stroller costed and tell the guy, listen, you stole it, you keep it, and give me a new stroller? Which one would you rather?
The new stroller.
The new stroller. So that's the other side of looking at it, where you realize that at a certain point, the ganav really becomes the owner, and you just want the value. In other words, at what point does the ganav take possession and it's his, and he has to give you the value? And at what point is it that item really is mine? I want that item back. So it depends. If it's changed, then it actually becomes it becomes his, and he has to give you the value back. If it didn't change, and there's you never gave up hope and you're trying to get it back and so on, that would be a reason why you would be getting that item back. But it's not to benefit the ganav. It just happens to be, this is the rule. This is how things work. Or for example, you have something that you stole and years later, it doesn't have much value in it. So you're going to say the guy should just give it back, So that's not to benefit the ganav. It's just the fact. When does it become the ganav's, and when does it become when does it? Yes, Moshe.
What about
Ezra? Ezra, were you saying something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Said,
okay, Ezra.
What about the time that I lost in not having the stroller? Who's paying for that?
Yeah, unfortunately, not everything, when it comes to a person and that you wounded someone. So there are laws about, let me just mute one second. Oh boy. There are laws about the person lost time from work. However, when it comes to like a stolen item, I don't think that it's retrievable. Certain things are unfortunate, it's not, it's sad that that's certain losses happen, and it's called a grumma. It would seem it would be considered like he caused you a loss, but I don't think that you're eligible to demand payment for that. But you're right, logically, he's caused you a more than just losing the stroller. He's caused you, you were stuck where you suffered, had to carry the children, and you had to, whatever it was, you had to embarrass yourself borrowing someone else's and so on. So it's a good question, but it seems that again, we're not learning Baba Kama, but that would be that would seem to be the rule, that it would be more called a grumma. Yes, Moshe, I'm sorry, you wanted to ask.
What about something other than tangible? A squatter takes over property. And he's been there for 5-6 years or 10 years,
right?
And all of a sudden, is that his? I mean, as opposed to having to give back the value of. The owner can't get the property back because he's been sitting there for 10 years, living on the property.
Right. So the rule is that karka eina nigzelas, property cannot be stolen. It always stays wherever it is, because you can't move it. It always stays in the hands of the original, the owner. And there's something called a chazaka she'ein imataina. This is Baba Basra rules. These are laws based on tractate Baba Basra, where you have a chazaka that doesn't she'ein imataina, that you don't have any claim to. So you want to say, I've been here for 10 years and you never protested, so it's mine. And that is called a chazaka. You've been there for 10 years. You've shown that, you've sort of proven yourself that you're connected to this land. You've lived there. And the other guy never protested. But the question is, but how did you get this land? Well, I stole it. I'm a squatter. Well, that's called a chazaka she'ein matani. You have no claim to why it should be yours. So the whole ability for you to claim that, the other guy never never protested only works if you lie and say, I bought it from so-and-so. But it doesn't work if you say I'm a squatter. In other words, if you're claiming I'm a squatter, it never becomes yours. Yeah, the whole concept of chazaka, again, this is not really laws connected to here, really connected to Baba Basra. But that's the concept is that you can't, the squatting is not a claim of why it should be yours. It could be used if you have a good claim that it is yours because you bought it and you paid for it from the original owner and he never protested, and even though you don't have the contract or you don't have the sale the title, you don't have the deed, but you could say, I mean, I lost the deed, but you see, I mean, I did buy it from you, so you have a claim why it's yours, and you have a proof that the guy never protested the fact that you've been living here for 10 years. You know, so that would be a case where the hazaka works, where you're dwelling on it works, but the squatting is not a good reason. So it doesn't change ownership, but land does not change ownership. Okay.
Is there a 3-year limit on that?
The 3-year limit.
Yeah, if the guy doesn't do anything in 3 years, then he can claim.
Then you can claim. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't throw him out.
Right. So the example that he gave was 10 years. So I was just using 10, but really it's 3. Now, what I did say is that it doesn't always work, that 3-year thing, because it only works if you have a good claim that it's yours. If you're a squatter, that's like saying, you know, I never bought it. I'm just here. I stole it, and you never protested, so it's mine. That's not a claim. That's the whole concept of the claim that 3 years is only if you have a good explanation saying I paid for it, I inherited it. How did you get it? I was given it as a gift. You need to have a good explanation why it's yours. Then you use the 3 years as a proof to why the other guy can't claim that it's really his. You know what I mean? That's that's where the 3 years kicks in. The 3 years does not kick in to say, oh, it becomes yours. No, it doesn't become yours because of 3 years. 3 years is a good excuse why I don't have the contract there. I lost. I wasn't careful because 3 years passed. I wasn't careful with the deed. I didn't keep my eye on the deed because you never protested. I mean, you know, I didn't expect you to wake up now and start arguing about it. So, and I did pay for it. I bought it. I own it. It's, you know, if you claim with the claim of squatting, 3 years or 10 years makes no difference. 100 years, you know, if you've been a squatter, then it's called a chazaka she'eni matayma. There's no, you don't have any explanation and a claim of why it is yours. Okay. So again, this is going off topic over here. So let's go back to where we are over here, where we've just explained Shmuel's opinion that there's a difference between the first day and the other days of Sukkot, even regarding a stolen lulav. And we said that the reason why the Mishnah picked the case of stolen, not to exclude borrowed, but really to tell you that even stolen is that it's yours, it's still not going to be valid on the first day of Sukkot. And we explain now a new reason why that might be. According to Shmuel, it might be because it's a mitzvah haba b'avera. According to Teves, maybe you could learn this in Teves, that it's a mitzvah haba b'avera on the first day, even though Shmuel doesn't agree with mitzvah haba b'avera, but that's only when it's rabbinic. On the other days of Sukkot, but on the first day, Shmuel might agree that it's a mitzvah haba b'avera, and therefore it would be invalid. Or according to the way Rashi's learning, that we don't know that you gave up, that the original owner gave up hope, and if it's stolen on the first day, you can't use it, because he might not have given up hope, and therefore it's not yours. Okay, so now we're up to Amar Lahu Rav Huna. This is page 30a, 3 lines up from the bottom of the page, the last word on the line. So the end of page 30a. Amar Lahu Rav Huna. Rav Huna said to them, who did he say to? Amar Lahu Rav Huna, Lahanu Avankari, to those Avankari. Avankari is means peddlers. Rav Huna told the peddlers they would sell all different types of stuff, including the arba minim, including the 4 species of sukkahs. So he told them, he's avnisu, asa. When you buy hadassim, asa are hadassim, myrtle branches, which are used in one of the 4 minim, it's one of the 4 species. So when you buy them, may oivdei koichavim from goyim, loy tigzazunatun, you should not be the ones who are cutting them from their bush. Ela ligzazuha inhu, let the goyim cut them, v'yavu lechu, and they will give them to you. You should be the one cutting them. My time. What is the reason? Stam oivdei koichavim gazlone araso ninu. Typical goyim are people who steal land, and we are nervous that this land was stolen from Yidden. You have to understand, in the olden days, very common. Yidden didn't have the same rights as the goyim. Goyim had the ability often to take advantage. They would steal land from Yidden, and then they would try to sell us hadassim, myrtles that grew on that land. Now, the problem is the avankari, these reichalim, these peddlers, they're going to buy the hadassim from these goyim. They're going to cut it themselves. Now, what happens if they cut it themselves? So we're afraid that it's stolen. And if it's stolen, it's not going to work out. It's not going to be good. Now, the Gemara explains even a little more. The Gemara says, the karka ain't an exelis. We turn the page. So they stole the land. So what is the case here? We'll soon understand what Rav Huna is all concerned about. He's telling these peddlers, you shouldn't be the ones cutting it. Let the goyim cut it, and then they give it to you, or buy it from them. But don't you shouldn't be the ones physically cutting it. And the reason is because the goyim, they might have stolen the land. Often they steal land from Yidden. And karka ain't an exelis. And even though the owner gave up hope already from the land, which might be obvious that in those days, like, you couldn't expect to get the land back. Even in today's day and age, I know someone from one of the South American countries, he says, yeah, we owned land there. The government just took it over, and they didn't pay us, and there's no way of getting it back. There's no hope. So imagine the olden days. So karka ain't an exelis. And even though the owner might have given up hope, but the rule is that the ground, there's no rule of stealing, because wherever the ground is, it always stays in the possession of the original owner. And so you might say, I gave up hope, but it doesn't matter, because karka ain't an exelis, and the ganav, the one who stole it, never takes ownership of it. And then you're going to say, what about the fruits on the land? So the fruits on the land, that could be stolen. And that could be considered to be the ganavs. The ganav could take ownership. But when does that take effect? When it's cut. So the Gemara says, Hilka, therefore, this is Rav Huna. Rav Huna saying this. Therefore, ligzazua inu, let the goyim cut it. And let the goyim cut it. Ki heichi delavu yush bailim, in order that there will be giving up hope of the owners already. Biyadayu didhu, when the fruits are in the hands of the ganav, of the seller, and then vishinoi harashus biyadaichu, and then you will own it through the giving up hope that the original owners had on the land, which is not considered giving up hope because the land is never stolen, but it works on the fruits of the land, but only once they're cut. And once they're cut, there's Yush. Then now you have the original owner gave up hope of ever getting these fruits back. He's never getting these myrtle branches back. So he gave up hope on them. And now when the ganav, when the seller cuts it and he hands it over to you, that's called shinoi reshus. It has changed ownership from the ganav or the gazlan to the buyer. It has changed ownership. So this is why it's important for you to not cut it yourself, because we want it to change ownership and not only have Yush, the original owner gives up hope from it, but it also should be change possession from the person who takes it, who steals it. Now the problem is this so necessary? The peddlers are going to sell it to someone else. So who cares really if the peddlers themselves cut it down? In other words, you have to understand, you know how it used to be with a strawberry picking, where you go and you pick your own strawberries. Okay, here's a pint, it's $5, fill it up, go pick your own things. You pay the $5 or $10 and you will go pick your own strawberries. Here, the same thing would apply. Myrtle. Oh, you want to buy myrtles? Okay. It's $1 a myrtle branch. Here, you go, here's a scissors, go cut as many as you want. If you go cut it, then it's going to be, the Gemara said, the Rav Huna says, it's a problem. Because we need it to change ownership. Also, it can't just be Yush, you also need Shinoi Rishus. You need to change ownership. Then it becomes yours. And in order to fulfill the mitzvah on Sukkah, it needs to be yours. You know, it needs to change ownership. And therefore, the way to do this would be to have the goyim cut it, and then you'll get it from them. It's no problem. The Mars surprised says, "What do you mean? These are peddlers. They're going to sell it to someone else. So it's going to change ownership even without the guy cutting it. Even if you cut it, it's going to change ownership." So the Gemara asks, "Ki gazuzu avankari, if the peddlers themselves cut it, levi yush bailim be a dayu. Let it be in their hands, the original owners, when they cut the myrtles, it'll be considered that the original owner gave up hope, while the myrtles are now being cut, or before it, they already gave up hope. The shinui harishus biyadon, and now when the change of rishus will take place biyadon, in the hands of the buyers. So, in other words, there is going to be a change of ownership here. Even if the avankari themselves cut it down, it's still going to be a change of ownership. So the Gemara says, like tzricha, it's not a problem. Rav Huna is explaining what to do this. Vahishana da avankari gufayhu, with the hadassim of the avankari themselves, that the avankari themselves are need to shake lulav and esrog. And so for them, how are they going to fulfill the mitzvah? They're the ones who buy it generally from these wholesale goyim. And the problem is it might have been stolen. And if it's stolen, it's going to be a problem. And the problem is either going to be that it's not going to be considered yours, or the other problem is that it might be considered, could be that it's a problem of stolen of mitzvah baba aveira. But however you want to learn this, which maybe we'll get into tomorrow, but the issue is that it's going to be applicable for the dalid minim, for the 4 species of the avankari of the peddlers. What they sell to someone else is not a problem, because it's going to change rishus. There's going to be yush and shinoi rishus when the other person receives it. But what they keep themselves is only going to be yush. There's only going to be giving up hope. The original owners will give up hope, but there won't be a shinoi rishus. There won't be a change of ownership, and that's why you better have the goyim cut it, and then it should they're the ganav, and then it actually changes ownership when you take it from them, and so we have Yush and Shinoi Rishus. Now the Gemara continues and asks more questions, and the Gemara says,
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yes.
Isn't there a concept that buying stolen property encourages stealing from the original guy stealing? He's
Right.
only going to be able to steal it because he's able to sell it. So if you're buying stolen property, that's encouraging the original stealing.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's you're basing it on a halacha. Very good. A good source. And the commentaries do mention it's brought down, or at least one of the commentaries asks this question. It says you have to learn that we're not sure that it's stolen. We're just worried that it might be stolen. And if it's stolen, it'll ruin your whole mitzvah. So because of this concern, we're trying to cover ourselves. But it's not that we know for a fact that it's stolen. If we knew for a fact that it's stolen, then it would be a problem. So the Gemara now asks, "V'lekninu b'shinoi ma'aser." Let us let them become the owners of it by the fact that you're tying it into the lulav. It's going to be considered shinoi ma'aser. It's going to be that the hadassim are no longer hadassim. You've changed it into into the form of a bunch of a daled minim. You've changed it into a daled minim type of a bunch where it's tied together. It's good. It's tied in a knot. So the understanding is that should be enough to say that it's a different item, and you now are the official owners of it, and this would be considered enough to say that it's no longer the issue of you not owning it, or it's not a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah b'avir. It's a different item. And so maybe that should be good enough. And why do you need? Who cares who cuts it? Shino Maisa. You've tied a knot around it together with the lulav, together with the aravos. So the Gemara answers, Kasava Rav Huna holds lulav ein tzarich eged. Must be that Rav Huna holds you don't need to tie it, and therefore according to Rav Huna you got a problem. You're not tying it. It's going to be a problem of Goslin. You're stealing these hadassim. It might be considered stolen, and if it's stolen, all you have is yush. You don't have a second type of halachic change of ownership and another change. All you have is the yush giving up hope. So in order to get around that problem, Rav Huna said you got to have the goyim cut it, and then it changes the ownership.
Rabbi?
Says, yes, Moshe.
Rabbi, if let's say a Goslin, he has a land and he stole it from the Yehudim, and he sells the plant to the hadassim to a peddler. Okay, but let's say that the owner, he's right next door to the Goslin, and he knows that he loses hope with the land, but then the peddler comes and he buys the hadassim from the Goslin, okay, and doesn't the original owner can say he's in collusion with the Goslinim, that who own the property. He could say, well, the peddler is, he's not free and clear. The peddler, then what happens is the original owner can say, well, they're working in collusion together, so it's not free and clear.
I'll be honest with you. I'm not exactly following. What is the point? Your point is that
the peddler does not, even whether he cuts it or not, he's still, if he's buying it from the original, from the Goslin who now has the property, he's as much guilty as the Goslin in the eyes of the
of the original owner.
Ah, so you're saying, well, we should go by what the original owner sees things, not by who cuts it. That's what you're asking.
More or
Why do we
less,
go by who cuts it? We should go by how the original owner sees it.
Exactly, because if he's nearby and he's watching, he gives up hope with the Gaza. He knows he's not going to get the property back, but the peddler, he sees the peddler going there, getting the Hadassim,
Right.
He says, well, he could be in collusion with this guy, Miradine, he could be involved with that.
Right. So what the understanding of the Gemara is that it doesn't matter what the original owner is thinking now at this time. The original owner gave up hope, never expecting it back.
Yes.
The problem is that giving up hope doesn't really work because the ground is because the karka ain't nixelis, can never steal ground. So it's only when does it kick in? It's only when it gets cut. So this is the legality of it, is that it depends on who cuts it. That's what it goes by, not the person who not who the owner thinks about, but it goes by whoever cuts it. That's going to be the shinoi rishus. That's going to decide if did it change possession from the ganav or not. In other words, we don't look at it as if the ganav owns it yet. So we can't call it a shinoi rishus until there's a ganav that owns this item. And in the meantime, the ganav doesn't own it because it's part of the ground, part of the earth. When it gets cut, then it becomes owned by the person who cuts it. So if you think about it from a legal perspective, it's whoever cuts it is going to be the one who's the ganav. Even though you're right, logically, like the other guy is really more of a ganav, but you can't call it shino. We need to fulfill this necessity of shinoi rishus. We need to fulfill this law of changing possession from the ganav to new person. In order to do that, it would need to be someone else cutting it. All right, so I'm not disagreeing with you in logic that he sees that person as the original ganav, but in practice, in order to make a shinoi rishus, in order to make it that it's kosher for you to use, you're going to need to somehow have someone else cut it, and then you take possession of it. So it's sort of like a technical issue that we don't consider it stolen until it actually is separated, detached from the ground. Okay, so now the Gemara says the im timtza loymar. We're going back we're on page 30b, and we're holding 4 lines from the bottom of 30b, 4 lines from the bottom. The im timtza loymar lulav tzarach eged. And even if you want to say that Rav Huna holds that a lulav needs to be tied, and you tie the lulav with the adasim and aravos, nevertheless, shinoi hachayzer libriyosayu. This is a change that can be returned to its original state, because if you untie it, everything no real change has happened to the hadasim. It's not like you poked holes in the hadassim. All you did was you tied something around it. So when you untie that, the hadassim are the same. So it's a change that returns to its original state. Lo shmei shina is not called a shinoi. So you can't call this a shinoi maisa. Originally, the Gemara wanted to call this a shinoi maisa, the change of in the item. Through doing an action, you change the item. And this would make sense when it comes to stealing something, that you actually change the item, and therefore the original owner doesn't really want it back. It's yours, you give them back the money. But here, it's not a real change because you just tied something around it. So now the Gemara asks, but what about the fact that the name changed? Initially, it's called Meikara, de Meikara Havale Asa. Till now, it's called Hadas. The Hashta, and now we turn page 31a. 31a, Hashta Hoshana. Now it's called Hoshana. That's the way they would call it. That when it's attached to the Daled Minim, it's called Hoshana. And the Gemara answers, Meikara Nami Li Asa Hoshana Kari. It's not really a change in name, because originally it was also called a shana, and the reason they would call it that was because on Sukkot it was used, and because the myrtles were used, and therefore it was often called that, and therefore you can't call this a shinoi hashem. Therefore, Rav Huna says you have to have someone else cut it if you want to fulfill the mitzvah properly. For the avankari themselves, for the peddlers themselves, to fulfill the mitzvah of the daled minim, they're going to need someone else to cut it. So they'll have yiyush, giving up hope by the original owner, and shina rishus from the original ganav has to change ownership to a second person. Okay, we're going to stop here.